Hey YouTube, it is Nebby, and today I'm going to be running through a few secret hero tips that I've discovered playing the different heroes, which you guys may or may not know about. Now, some of these tips are going to be extremely useful in your hero gameplay, so they should be able to help you deal with different situations and getting kill streaks with the heroes. So, the first hero we're going to start off with is Yoda. Now, Yoda has a healing ability where he puts his hands up and he gives himself some extra health for about like 30 seconds or so. And when he does this, he actually has to stop and do the animation for about a second to actually get that health. So, a secret way to bypass this animation so you don't actually have to stop and heal is to use it while you dash. So as you guys can see in the footage, if you dash and use it mid-air, like while you're dashing, you actually won't have to do the animation to heal. So this is extremely useful when you want to take on numerous enemies and you need to sort of get that extra health so that they won't eat into all of your normal health, so they can sort of use that as a bit of a padding and a buffer to your normal health, so you can dash in, heal, and then dash, get another kill, dash out, etc. So that's a good secret with Yoda. Another good tip with Yoda is to jump when he swings his lightsaber just during his normal attack. So when using Yoda, a lot of the time when he swings his lightsaber normally, he does all these crazy acrobatics and he sort of loses sight of where the enemy is, and he sort of might go off in his own direction sometimes because he is sort of hard to control. So one thing that I've discovered with Yoda is to jump and swing your lightsaber, and that way you'll only swing once and you'll still do the same amount of damage, and then you can reset and see the enemy again and do the second hit. So it's a much more effective way of using Yoda because it doesn't waste all his movement. He doesn't have to keep jumping and spinning and doing all these acrobatics. I know they look cool, but they just aren't practical. So jump and swing with Yoda to get those easier kills. Next up, we have Emperor Palpatine. Now, Palpatine is a funny one because this is actually not so much a secret tip, but it's just how to use him correctly. So Palpatine actually has no block. A lot of people think that L2 is block, and I used to think this until I figured this out. When you play as Palpatine, you have to control both his right hand and his left hand. So the right bumper will be his right hand and the left bumper will be his left hand. Now, if you only use the right bumper to attack, you're only going to be doing half damage, as you guys will see in the footage. So basically, you have to hold in L2 and R2 to do double damage. Now, a lot of my friends didn't know this until I told them, and it is sort of a hassle when you can't figure out how to play Palpatine. So this will make Palpatine a lot more stronger and a lot more useful. He still is quite weak, but this doubles his power, gives him a bit more unlimited power, so to speak. Another secret tip with Palpatine is that his Dark Aura ability actually goes through walls. So as long as the person is on the level that you are, if they're at the same level and the same height, the Dark Aura can go through walls. So you guys will see it's going through concrete walls here, and it damages and slows down enemies. So you can sort of stand on the edge of a wall and you can get people on the other side of that wall who might be camping corners.
They believe the advantage is theirs.
Next up, we have Chewbacca. So Chewbacca has this ground slam ability where you run and then you press the button again to activate the actual slam. Now, if you want to activate this ability straight away without the running animation, say there's a few enemies around you and you want to activate it straight away, the secret way to do this is to actually jump in the air and then press the slam button. And this way he'll actually slam similarly to how he does it in Battlefront 1, where he basically just slams the ground with his fists straight away. So you can see I'm jumping off the big steps on Yavin 4 here. I jump and then mid-air I press it and I slam all the way down and get those two guys. So that's a secret little tip with Chewbacca. Also, when you're using the running part of the slam, you can roll. So Chewbacca is quite vulnerable when he's running in straight like that. So if you press the roll button, you can actually roll up to 2 times, I believe. So yeah, when you're charging forward, roll twice and then activate the slam, because it means you're going to be less of an easy target. You're going to dodge a few bullets and take less damage. Ardyn is one of my favourite heroes, and she has a few cool abilities which have a few little sneaky workarounds which a lot of people wouldn't know about. So the first one is a pulse cannon. So the pulse cannon actually has 2 different charging bars. Basically, the first bar that comes up is the damage bar. So once that one gets to full, that's the max damage that you're going to do with the pulse cannon. And you'll see this as I shoot these heavies. Basically, I charge it up to the full where it charges up, and it does the same amount of damage as when I hold it for the full charge. Now that full charge is actually the second charge. When the first bar fills up and then the second bar starts filling up, that's not a damage bar. That bar is an automatic shoot bar. So basically, the first bar is how much damage you'll do, and then the second bar is when that bar fills up, you're going to shoot the pulse cannon automatically even if you don't release it yourself. So Iden actually has the damage one, and then she has the release one. So don't get confused. Don't think that you have to charge up the pulse cannon the whole way 2 bars to get the maximum damage. You only have to charge up the first bar, which does charge up pretty quickly. It doesn't take too long to charge it up all the way. And then the second bar, it'll automatically shoot. So keep that in mind when using Iden. Another tip with Iden is that you actually can't disable her shield by pressing the ability again. I've tried it. If you press her ability with R1 or whatever it is on Xbox and PC, you can't actually turn the shield off with that same button. The only way to turn off Iden's shield early is to shoot her primary weapon. So you can use the secondary fire or you can use just the normal blaster. But doing so will actually lower her shield and it'll make her get back into combat. So that's the only way to lower Iden's shield. If you didn't know about it, now you do. One more thing that I do like about Iden as well is that her secondary fire cooldown and her primary fire cooldown are actually separate. So in the old Battlefront with the TL50, you'd have to charge up the secondary fire and then wait for it all to cool down before you could actually shoot your primary blaster. It is not the case in this one. With Iden, you can do a secondary fire shot and then straight away you can fire the primary blaster. The secondary fire does contribute a little bit to the primary blaster overheat, but only a little bit. You can probably get off 4 or 5 secondary fires before you have to cool it down. So this is a handy tip if you want to weaken someone with the secondary fire, get them down to low health, and then finish them off with the main gun. You can do that quickly, and it does not have to recharge your whole cooling to do that. The next hero that I have tips for is Bossk. Now Bossk is still very powerful, carrying over a lot of the power that he had in Battlefront 1 to Battlefront 2. He does feel very different though, and there are a few different changes that Bossk has which you guys might not know about. So the first one is Bossk's jump. So Bossk actually is a Trandoshan, and I believe that he's meant to be really light and he can jump really high and sort of has a floating animation when he does jump. So if you just click X, he won't jump very high, but if you hold X in, he will actually jump extremely high. And he can almost jump as high as a Jedi, which is quite high. He actually it feels like he's floating when you do jump. And this is going to be very useful for navigating different areas and maneuvering your way around a map, getting over obstacles that you might not otherwise be able to get over if you didn't know how to jump so high. So that's a good one to keep in mind with Bossk. And the other one is that one of his abilities, which is related to the Dioxis Grenade, actually allows Bossk to heal himself with his own Dioxis Grenade. So you can do damage against enemies with the Dioxis Grenade while simultaneously healing yourself. So if you throw the Dioxis down in a room with enemies and then you run into that room, you'll be healing yourself as well as doing damage to other enemies, which is extremely useful because it sort of is twofold. It hurts enemies and it heals yourself, so you're gaining that health back while they're shooting at you, which is extremely useful when using Bossk. Bossk can also regen his health all the way back to 600. He is the one hero who does not lose his overall health when he takes damage. So he can go all the way down to 50 health and then regen all the way back up to 600. All the other heroes actually lose health as they go, so they sort of lose their maximum health, which can go down to like 150, 300, etc, etc. But because Bossk is Trandoshan, he does not have this restriction. He always heals back to 600 health, which is extremely good because you can get heaps hurt and then you can run out, heal up, and come back in to fight again. Next up we have Lando Calrissian. Now the secret tip with Lando is that you can actually shoot while throwing out his shock disabler ability. So when you throw out the smoke grenade or you do the sharp shot, you can't actually continue to shoot, and a lot of the heroes have the same thing where when you're doing an ability you can't actually keep shooting your weapon. But Lando is pretty special because when he throws his shock ability he can actually continue to shoot. So make sure to use both at the same time. Use the shooting while you're throwing it down to sort of help yourself, cover yourself. Keep on killing enemies while you throw it out, and then if you don't kill everyone, you can use the shock to shock the enemies and finish them all off. So that's a handy little tip that I've discovered with Lando. Next up we have Kylo Ren, who is probably my favourite villain in the game. He is an absolute badass, and one thing that I know about Kylo, which I know that a lot of people don't know, is that his frenzy attack, which is his L1 R1 ability, actually works very differently to how a lot of people think. So a lot of people think that it's very like free and you can choose where to go with it. So if you're aiming it forward and you press L1 and R1, a lot of people believe that you'll just go straight forward, but that is not the case. This ability actually locks on to the nearest person who is near Kylo. So if you're aiming at someone in front of you who is 10 meters in front of you and there is an enemy 1 meter behind you, Kylo will actually go backwards where you're not aiming and start hurting that enemy. And this has actually hurt me in a lot of situations before. I've been trying to kill an enemy in front of me and I've pressed the ability and Kylo's gone backwards into a room where there was a lot of enemies, and I basically got destroyed by heaps of enemies because I wasn't paying attention and he put me back onto the nearest enemy. So when you use this ability, make sure that the enemy you want to use it on is the closest enemy to you, because it is quite misleading. It is quite confusing to use this ability and then you end up sort of randomly in a room where you didn't want to go. So be careful, be mindful when using this ability. He actually locks on to the person who is nearest to him. Kylo Ren can also use his freeze and his pull abilities mid-air, which stops the animation, which means you're moving during the animation so that you cannot take as much damage. And also this is a good tip so that you can, take less damage and keep on the move with Kylo Ren. Darth Vader has an ability where he basically puts his fist down and he takes less damage and does more damage for a short period of time. Now, similar to the Yoda one, he does have a small animation for this, so the way to get around this animation is to actually jump, and then when you jump you press the ability, and if you use your lightsaber throw right after, it'll actually cancel out the animation. So if you do a normal jump and then just use that one ability, it will still do the animation when you land. But if you do actually jump, do the ability and then throw your lightsaber and get a kill with the lightsaber, or even not, just if you throw the lightsaber, it'll actually cancel out the animation for that ability. So that means you'll be able to get more damage and more damage resistance without actually having to use the animation, which is going to make you take less damage in the process of using the ability, which is always handy. Last up we have Rey, who is probably the most powerful hero in the game in my opinion at this point. Her abilities are very powerful and her lightsaber strikes are just extremely good. Very powerful, kills enemies quicker than Yoda, which is, it is what it is. I'm not going to say if it's good or bad, but a few tips that I have with Rey is, first off, her inside ability, which is very good and reveals enemies on the map, is actually extremely useful because it does mean that Rey goes off the enemy's map while it is in use. So if you ever want to get a flank with Rey and catch enemies off guard, it is good to use the inside ability, not only to show yourself where the enemies are, but also to take yourself off the map so that they don't know where you are. So this is an extremely good thing to use for flanks, for getting up behind enemy heroes, for escaping enemy situations where you might be overwhelmed, etc, etc. Another tip that I have with Rey involves her mind trick. Now, a good thing that I use with Rey for a mind trick is to use the mind trick ability and then quickly dash behind the enemy, because when you get mind tricked you actually can't turn your aimer that much. It sort of restricts how much you can aim. So when you get mind tricked you actually can't do a 180 in the time that it runs out, so you can't actually turn around behind you. So what I like to do with Rey is mind trick an enemy, especially someone who is blocking, and then you dash behind them, as you guys will see, and then you hit them in the back, and they cannot do a thing, guys. They actually just stand there hopeless. They cannot do a thing until it wears off, and then you can use that other ability to knock them over and carry on the fight that way. The last tip that I have with Rey is to cancel out her dash ability. So her straight dash where she charges with her lightsaber, the only way to cancel this one out is to dash away. So Rey can just do the dash ability to get out of a charge early, which is actually extremely useful because I like to use it to knock people over, and then I dash backwards to where they were, where I knocked them over, and then I swipe once and they're usually dead. So that's an extremely useful tip with Rey that helps me a lot in situations, especially against other villains and infantry. But yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. Like the video if you enjoyed, like the video if you learned anything new. Let me know if you want to see any more of these, any more hero tips, hero guides, that sort of thing, and I'm going to get out of here. I will see you all in the next video.